When Raiders news happens, we make free videos. Hit that subscribe button if you're a real one. If you're not, you're probably rooting for the Chiefs in just a few weeks. What's going on, Raider Nation? We got some breaking news here. The Las Vegas Raiders have claimed 2 players off the waiver. We're going to talk about both of those guys. And literally at the time that I'm recording this video, the Las Vegas Raiders just cut Byron Young. By moving on from Young, they are going to be eating somewhere around $800,000 of salary cap space. Yes, he was kept to that 53-man roster. But what's very important here is because the Raiders claimed 2 guys who are now going to be on this team for the next 3 weeks, they also had to decide to move on from 2 players, one being Byron Young. I'll kind of talk about a little bit later on in the show who are some of the other players that I thought Young was on that list because, I mean, with what the Raiders did by going out and claiming Laulu, definitely think is a reason why they did that. But if you're wondering, all right, Mitch, who are the 2 players that the Raiders claim? That was the original idea of this video. We're going to sprinkle in a little bit more of Byron Young at the end. So Thomas Harper was claimed here by the Las Vegas Raiders. He spent this offseason with the Los Angeles Chargers. He's 5'10", 195-pound player, played for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish last season. Realistically, only started 1 year in college. And if you're looking for versatility, which this staff obviously is, he can play in the slot. That's what he does. He's a slot corner, and that's how I think that the Raiders are going to try to use him. He is physical. He likes to tackle, so you might be able to drop him back as a safety. According to Lance Zierlein, he said, nickel cornerback with the traits and toughness for consideration as a fill-in safety if needed. Harper's only season as a starter came in a single year at Notre Dame, but he looked capable in his role. He's tenacious in coverage and as a run defender. He has above-average explosiveness and the ability to make up ground when needed. He stays hyper-focused on his man in coverage and lacks ideal eye balance and length to make plays on the football. Harper needs to work in both man and zone coverages, but he has the traits, toughness, and upside to have a chance once he gets in to the NFL. So I think when you hear a lot of those things there, tough player, physical guy, wants some of that versatility. I'll admit one of the players that I'm thinking that the Raiders could potentially, just cut and maybe want to try to bring back to the practice squad is MJ Devonshire. And the only reason why that I say that is because when you look at some of the things that the Raiders have done over the past few weeks, they have started to move Isaiah Pola-Mao inside as that backup slot corner to Nate Hobbs. So now when you think that MJ Devonshire's there, I know that the Raiders drafted him in the 7th. He hasn't looked all that great. I still think that he's got some upside. He's got some good physical traits. But if the Raiders are going to be cutting Byron Young and they're going to bring in a defensive tackle, my mind instantly goes to who's the player that's going to be playing Harper's role. I think right now it is MJ Devonshire. And again, I'll kind of break down some of the other players that this could be as well. But Thomas Harper is now a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. This also is a very important note that they claimed his 3-year UDFA contract. So this could be a player that the Raiders might want to try to keep around. It's mainly always happens when that goes down. But again, he's going to be on the team for the next 3 weeks. We'll talk about who the other player was that the Raiders ended up claiming off waivers. But I got to give a shout out to our sponsor here, GameTime. I love being able to go to sporting events. I was trying to figure out a way to go to Allegiant Stadium this weekend to watch LSU up against USC. But hey, maybe somebody wants to watch, I don't know, a Colorado football game. We're going to talk about that at the end of today's show. But download the GameTime app. I think it's an amazing spot. Create an account. Use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS. That's CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. Also, they got this brand new super deal, which shows you the best deal that is on the app. And Chugs has been like, hey, Mitch, can we go to this UFC event? Can we go to this UFC event inside of the, what is it called? The Sphere, which would be an electric factory. But I think anytime you go out to Vegas, there's so much for you to do. And when you commit to things ahead of time, you might miss out on other opportunities and other deals. So legitimately, it's the last-minute tickets. It's the flash deals that they show. You can see your seats before you get them. I love the all-in pricing. If you're like, all right, Mitch, talk to me. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Chugs and I trust it, and if you trust Chugs and I, go down in the comments under the description. You can find those links in there. Let's go to the other player that the Raiders claimed off waivers, and it's Jonah Laulu. And 6'5", 292-pounder, played college football with the Sooners. He was a 7th-round pick by the Indianapolis Colts this past year, so the fact that Indy decided to move on from him, the Raiders go out and get him, and this is another dude that you're looking for. You need somebody that you can believe in a little bit. And I know Byron Young was a 3rd-round pick, but the Raiders want guys that go out there and they hit some people in the face. Byron Young's not going to be able to do that. Laulu's a physical player and played 74 snaps in the preseason, and realistically, I thought was pretty surprised that he did not end up making that squad. 2 pressures, 2 tackles for loss, 3 stops overall, but an interior defender with below-average mass but outstanding athletic traits. This is according to Lance Zierlein. With loose and explosive hips, Laulu has rare fluidity and closing burst to the football. He springs into blockers off the snap and has the ability to become more disruptive as a run defender. But he lacks ideal instincts and diagnostic quickness. Laulu's rush production is nothing special, but it is easy to see the ingredients are on the table there. So to me, this sounds like a player that's got some athletic ability, but needs the proper coaching, and I will always bet on Antonio Pierce. I will always bet on Patrick Graham. I will always bet on Rob Leonard, and if everything that I heard, because I'm not going to sit up here and act like I've watched a bunch of tape on him. No, I'm reading off notes here from people that do a lot of work in the NFL draft, considering both of these players, had the chance to get drafted. And when I hear everything I just did on Laulu, sign me up for it, because he sounds like he's going to be putting in the work, putting in the time, putting in the effort. That's something that we didn't see out of Byron Young. So let me know down below in the comment section which claim was the better one. Thomas Harper, think of him again as a slot corner, offers you a little bit of flexibility, maybe as a safety, which this is another example of the Raiders are showing you what they want on special teams for some of those extra players. Or Jonah Laulu. Type JL. Let me know down below who was the better claim. The name that I'm going to go with here is I'm going to go with the defensive tackle, simply because I think it is a bigger need, and it's something that this Raiders team really did truly need, where Byron Young was a bad anchor. Byron Young was not able to really just set his feet and get north and south. We wanted Byron Young to be a legit tackle, right? That's what we wanted. We wanted somebody that you could rely on. And I think also the fact that the Raiders chose to keep Nesta Jade Silvera over Byron Young, I think, is a very telling thing. But overall, I got to say it's Laulu, because I do think that the upside might be a little bit more. But let's also not sleep on Harper. Notre Dame product, which we know Tom Telesco is always all about. So here are some Raiders cut candidates. Now, since they already moved on from Byron Young, I'm just going to tell you all this ahead of time. You're going to see his name here again, because right when Chugs and I started filming, the Raiders released Byron. I will say another name to at least keep in mind that could get released is Kana'i Mauga, just because the Raiders kept 7 linebackers, because Mauga seems to always be the player that's just hanging around on this roster. So just keep that name out there. I was going to say Nesta Jade Silvera could be a name to be thrown out there, but since they moved on from Byron Young, it's not going to be there. Ramel Keyton could be another name that I would at least throw out there as a receiver. They have 6. They like Tyreek McAllister. I just don't think it's not going to be him. Byron Young, there it is. And then the last name, which was the name that I mentioned earlier, because again, when I put together this list, I didn't know exactly who the Raiders' first cut was going to be in Byron Young. So when I put this list together, it was based off of just the 2 players that the Raiders ended up going out and claiming off waivers. And since they did end up claiming waivers, I had a lot of people ask me, Mitch, did they put in any more claims? Did any other Raiders players that were released, did they get claimed? We're going to talk about all of that coming up here on today's show, because I know we're going to get a lot of questions around it. So my question is now, you got to still move on from one player. You still got to cut somebody from that 53-man roster. Who should it be? Let me know down below. I gave you my answers. If I had a gut feeling, I'm going to go with MJ Devonshire. I'm going to say Kana'i Mauga. Those would be my top 2 answers of how I would look. The Raiders also, though, put in 2 other claims. And Keenan Isaac, who, by the way, they had no chance of getting him. This is a player that I talked about yesterday in my waiver wire targets video. Didn't go. He ended up going to Carolina. And Carolina, I think, ended up taking 6 players off the waiver. And then another player was Zachary Thomas. He was a tackle, played in 2 games last season. Raiders put in a claim for a tackle. They put in a claim for a corner, and then they also got the 2 players that I talked about above. So watch out for the Raiders to look at maybe adding another offensive tackle, or maybe you're going to promote one of your offensive tackles up from that practice squad. Good news is none of the players that the Raiders cut yesterday or moved on from were claimed. So realistically, you're going to see a lot of those dudes probably come back to that practice squad, and maybe later on today, heck, maybe bright and early tomorrow morning, I'll make a video around the Raiders practice squad and who ends up making that team. It's just our schedule here, I'm not going to lie to you, is a little bit crazy at the Chat Sports Studios. Before I get out of here, though, I do want to tell you, Chugs and I, we're going to be live tomorrow for North Dakota State up against Colorado, man. We always get questions around Shedeur Sanders. We're always getting questions around Dion. Well, you know what? Let's watch these guys play. I'm going to be doing this throughout the season. If there's certain quarterbacks that you want us to scout, because let's face it, we're not totally sold on Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, or finding that franchise QB. So instead of doing Raiders Friday happy hour, we're going to do this instead. We're going to go live. We're going to treat this like happy hour. We're going to put our drinking pants on. We're going to have a good time. We're going to be live an hour before kickoff, so 7 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you got those notifications turned on. And if you want to party with the nation and watch a little Shedeur action, make sure you're here.